Good morning. Happy Thursday. My name is Mary Corrado. I'm an interior designer here in Portland, Oregon. Today I am going to demonstrate how to take an old framed mirror and turn it into something much prettier using milk paint. So let's get started, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, I have jumped ahead a couple of steps just because of the amount of time we have. So let me explain what I have done so far already. You want to start any project with your clean slate. So always start with a clean slate. Okay, once you've done that, then I went ahead and I painted one coat of one step. This one is called Windsor. It's a brown because when we do the milk paint, we are going to be taking off some layers, and this brown will show through underneath. Now you want to use either a one-step paint or a gel stain. You want something as your base coat before you apply cracked gesso and milk paint. The cracked gesso is mixed just in a bowl, and you use equal parts cracked gesso and water, just regular warm tap water. Stir it till it comes to a nice creamy consistency and paint it on. So this has already been painted, obviously. It is dry, and it will dry down to a bit of a rough surface. So at this point is where I'm going to proceed with these steps and show you how to do this. I am going to take my 400 sandpaper, and I'm going to give this surface a nice little sanding. We just want to take off some of the roughness. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we have our layer of gesso and it's ready to accept the milk paint, I will show you how to make the milk paint. So, I am using my linen apron today. It's kind of a pretty creamy kind of color. Here it is in a sample, pre-done. This has been waxed and it has been dusted, but this is the color of the milk paint that I'm using today. So, what you want to do is use equal parts milk paint to water. So just add it to your bowl. Now the milk paint will dry in this dry color form. Even when you mix it with water, what you see in the powdered form will be the color on your furniture. Okay, so let's add my warm water. Because I like to get a nice paste. Get it nice and smooth. Get the lumps out. And then go back and thin it out. Now milk paint is actually made with casein, with a milk product. So you can only use it in small batches, because if you mix up a whole bunch of this, it only has a shelf life of 2 weeks, and that's even when you leave it in the refrigerator. So mix it up. If you know that you're going to need a bunch for a project, you'll have about 2 weeks to complete the project, because that's how long your paint will survive. Okay, so keep mixing. You're gonna see some and feel and hear some granules in the milk paint. So just keep mixing it together. Let them dissolve a bit. And sometimes people have more luck when they actually mix this the night before, let it sit overnight, and come back and work with it. But if you do that, always make sure, and even just mixing it now, always make sure you are incorporating all the granules, constantly stirring, constantly agitating, because this will settle and it will separate, and you will get the water on top and the particles on the bottom. Okay, so let's give this a little more water. And this will be a very watery substance. So don't be surprised if it feels too watery going on. That's just the nature of it. Now, if you find you have too much foam on your milk paint after you've mixed it, feel free to strain it with either cheesecloth or a pantyhose. They both work. That way it will separate the foam from the paint. You really do not want to paint with foam. Okay. Looks good. Let's start painting. I use a chip brush to apply the milk paint. So just go ahead, dip it in. Give it a good little stir. I want to make sure it's all incorporated. Offload and just start to paint. Like I said, it goes on very thin, very watery. Just apply this everywhere, 100% coverage. Don't want it to puddle. Get this out of the way. Just make sure you have 100% coverage. No holidays. Holidays is a term meaning no unpainted areas, no white spots or, like I said, unpainted areas. Okay, now that I've gotten it all painted with one coat, I am going to use my blow dryer and dry it, and then we will go from there. We are now dry. So what we're going to do is we want a bowl of water and a small bowl for our antiquing glaze. Just give it a little shake. Pour it into the bowl. And now we take a natural sea sponge. We are going to dip it in the water so it gets back to its natural soft state. And we are then going to squeeze it out and add it into our antiquing glaze. Load up, but then squeeze it out. Okay? And just start dabbing. You just want to put it everywhere. This will start to activate the paint and it will start to take it off. But you always want to keep rotating your sponge so as not to just take paint off and then move it. At this point, it's not really taking the paint off yet. It's just getting it ready to soften. But definitely move your sponge around. If you can see it start to take paint off, dip your sponge in your water, clean it out, and reapply your antiquing glaze. So there. Okay, let's rinse this out. Now, like I said, this will darken the milk paint a bit, which is really lovely. It'll give it just a little more depth of color. I'm going to kind of focus on corners a bit. That's where things tend to wear the most. Edges. I'm going to lift this up so you guys can see it better. Let me lift this a little bit too. Okay, are you starting to see where it's coming off and starting to age? That's what you want to continue to do until you are satisfied all the way around. So I'm going to keep going kind of go in and take your antiquing glaze. You can use a little toothbrush or a little brush. I'm just going to use my fingers and just kind of flick some dots onto the finish. That will give it a little tiny bit more texture. The glare is kind of hard to see, I think. So let me finish drawing this and then I'll show you. Okay. Let's take a look. I just want to show you as best as you can see. See how I flicked a little bit of that antiquing? It just gives it just a little bit extra texture. And you can see where it's worn off all the way down to the base, or where it's worn off, and still you can see the cracked gesso underneath. So now we're going to go into the wax, the light wax, the dark wax, and the dust of ages. And this will transform this piece even more. Okay. Let's do it. The light wax. We always start with light wax. There we go. Just a puck of nice light wax. You always use a light wax brush, and you want cardboard to offload. So let me grab some cardboard. Here we go. Get your brush into the puck, fill it up, but always, always you want to offload onto some cardboard. You want it coated on your brush, but you don't want it so coated that you're going to leave globs. So lightly, let me turn this down. Lightly start to wax. And you can already see how the wax works with the milk paint and brings in layers of color. You want to do this everywhere. Don't press so hard that you're getting the even coat of wax everywhere, because by leaving some of it with a lighter coating or almost no coating, you're changing the tones of the colors of paints. So don't go overboard.
Why don't you take the time now while I wax to chime in and say hi to us, tell us where you're from, and if you want to share this video with 3 friends, we will put your name in a drawing and you can win your own milk paint.
Okay, let me hold this up and show you what this is looking like. Okay, hopefully you can see that. See that variation of color and texture. And that's what the wax is doing. So we will continue on, wax the whole thing, come back with some dark wax and dust of ages, and we will be finished. Okay, now that I have the light wax everywhere, we are going to let it come to tack, which means about a 20-minute drying time. When you first put it on and you feel the wax, it will feel kind of slimy-ish, greasy-ish. And when it's come to tack, it just won't feel quite so greasy. It will have a little bit of resistance when you kind of touch it. So let's just trying to speed it along a bit. Because next we're going to move on to the dark wax. Always remember, light wax first, dark wax after the light wax has come to tack. Do not rush it. Do not put the dark wax on first. Do not put the dark wax on when the light wax is still wet. It will then create its own wax color, and that is not what you want. You want the dark wax to just be a pretty accent to show a little more age and not just a globs of brown all over your frame. So you're going to be light-handed when you use it. Okay. Feeling good. Okay. Dark wax brush. Load up. Definitely offload. That one had a lot more wax on it. So you definitely want to offload quite a bit. You want to control this. You don't want this just going too heavy. Okay. So what you do is you start on the edge. Always start on the edges. Use a light hand. Doesn't take much. Just lightly go around. Especially with this light color, you definitely can see it. Your corners would get a little grungier. I'll try and get inside this area. So I'm not really overloading this brush at all. A little bit goes a really long way. Let me hold this up to show you. I'm going to move this up. There you go. Can you see that? Nice. Okay, let's let this dry a bit, and then we're going to do our final coat. We are going to do Dust of Ages. And that will actually add a little more depth of color, add a little more bit of grunge, and get it into the crevices where dust would naturally have formed and collected in an old piece. Okay, when you're doing your Dust of Ages, I advise wearing a mask because it gets really dusty, and especially if this is kind of a big piece, you'll want to wear a mask. Don't have mine with me, but don't do as I do, do as I say. Okay, let's turn it back down one more time. And let's get our Dust of Ages and our dust brush. You want your very own dust brush. I just mark a brush. That way I never get it confused. Okay. Dip it in, offload it, and generously put it on your piece. Don't be afraid that you're getting too much. You're gonna get it in with the wax, and it will burnish it really beautifully. This actually adds another really wonderful layer of finish. Okay, let's finish up at the top, then I'll burnish it, and we're done. Okay, now that we are done with the dust and we have given this a good burnish, I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to move the camera up. Now look at that. Look at the difference from what we started from. all this antiquing, all this dark, distressed look. Follow the steps and you too will create something that looks just like this. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a ton of fun. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely worth the work because you will come out with a gorgeous product. So enjoy this and hopefully we'll see you next Thursday. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.